So it's been about a month since I last played Battlefield 5, and that's not just because I have a newborn in the house. As much as I enjoyed the launch of Wake Island, the classic Battlefield map, last month, that was actually the last day that I played Battlefield 5, was the launch of that map. The last couple of videos that I have posted were already recorded in late November, early December. The 5.2 patch that changed all of the weapon balance was just that bad for me. It was just a big turnoff even with the fantastic new Wake map, and I really didn't miss the game too much until, and yes I am getting to a point here, until I saw a bit of detail here in Battlefield 5 that I guess you could say tickled my immersion. Is that a thing? You guys know me, I do love the small details. I'm all about the immersion, and when I saw this post on the Battlefield 5 subreddit, I knew I had to go check out the M3 grease gun for myself, just because of the decisions that DICE made when they were adding it to the game. The discussion thread was actually about how the M3 grease gun appeared to have the same sound effect for both the suppressed and unsuppressed version. You heard that correctly, the M3 is only the second suppressed gun in the entire game. But to a lot of people, the sound effects for both the suppressed and unsuppressed versions just sounded exactly the same. These rather similar sounding suppressed and unsuppressed sound effects actually is not a bug. It's an intentional design decision, and one that you really don't see very often in video games. Besides just appreciating those small details, the ridiculous Hollywood myths around suppressors is actually a bit of a pet peeve for me. I own a few suppressors, and last year I did a video all about the myths surrounding them and how quiet they actually are. I even designed and built one of my own in an episode of Backyard Battlefield just so I could do a side-by-side comparison. As you guys can hear there, while there is roughly a 15 decibel reduction in the gunshot reports themselves, the really big changes are actually in the overall tone of the shots. The tone is deeper and a little less harsh. That's the kind of effect that DICE has reproduced quite accurately here in Battlefield 5. A suppressed gunshot, in almost all cases, is still nowhere close to hearing safe, and if you take a few suppressed shots with a suppressor attached to your gun without your hearing protection on, it's definitely going to be rather uncomfortable. To see this level of detail in Battlefield 5's sound design is really cool, and props to DICE for making that decision, and not going with the video gamey sound effects when it comes to suppressors. As much as I love the Hitman series, for example, the idea that you can fire a suppressed 45 right behind somebody and they're going to have no idea is frankly just ridiculous.
That is Silvio Caruso.
What's cool about the M3 grease gun here in Battlefield 5 is, besides having a slightly different sound effect, the real advantage comes in the in-game HUD actually. Yes, the gun is still going to be pretty loud even with the suppressor, but the enemies that you're shooting aren't going to get the directional hit indicators for where that fire's coming from. So, if you are somebody who likes a bit of flanking like I do when I'm on foot in a Battlefield game, the suppressor is a great option for your weapon specialization. And of course, with that level of detail just for the sound effects, DICE also has the other stuff you would expect for having an accurate M3 model here in game, which is having the dust cover actually be the safety. You can see it having to be opened when it's being fired, and then it flops around as the gun's firing, but not quite closing, thankfully. And I also like that you can very clearly see your soldier lock the bolt back when he reloads the magazine. Being a very simple welded submachine gun, the M3 does fire from an open bolt, and it's just really cool to see how your soldier tilts that gun back so we can see that new magazine locked into place as he locks the bolt open and has the gun at that point ready to fire. As much as I do love immersion, I'm not just going to hop into the game to check out one weapon. I went back and bought a couple of the other guns that I had missed out on, like of course the infamous BAR, and a few others on the Japanese side. And as I expected, the 5.2 balance changes to the overall gun's performance, that longer time to kill, does take some of the enjoyment out of these new weapons, and I really wasn't missing out on too much during my 1-month Battlefield break, but I'm still hoping that DICE takes the rather loud and determined community feedback here to heart and still considers at least moderating these rather extreme gun changes that were in the 5.2 patch. The game isn't bad, it is still fun to play, the new guns are still enjoyable, but when I'm taking, you know, nearly a full magazine to kill somebody with the bar, I can't help but think, oh man, what would this gun have been like if it had launched with a Pacific original content back at the end of October, and I could have used it for that 1 month before the 5.2 patch came out. That thing would have been so much more fun before the weapon rebalancing, but it is what it is. The game is still pretty enjoyable. I just again hope that we don't just get more content drops as the Pacific Theater appears to be winding down here, but that DICE does take some of that boisterous feedback into account. It was also kind of sad to see that there's definitely still a pretty severe hacker problem. It's probably about an hour or two you can go on PC without seeing a hacker, but if it's a busy weekend, you're definitely going to run into a couple along the way, and I don't understand the radio silence from DICE on this. I know it's far worse in the Asian servers and in parts of Europe as well, so I can't imagine how bad those servers are, given that America has its own problems with hackers. But I would really like to see DICE crack down on these guys. They're not even the subtle hackers. It's the blatant server clearing hackers still seeming to have their way with this game. Oh, and we also got this week a new playlist that I was quite excited to check out as I was dipping my toes back into Battlefield 5 here, and that was the weather playlist. I've actually forgotten what it's actually called. But essentially, it's a couple of hand-picked maps having their weather effects permanently activated. So on Fiel, you're going to have a non-stop blizzard. On Hamada, you're going to have the non-stop Mars sandstorm, and so on. And I was kind of hoping to see a couple of new storms in there, perhaps a thunderstorm on a map that we hadn't seen before. And we did get a couple of maps that have fog and whatnot that I don't think I had seen before. I mean, it might have been there, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But really no new weather that I could tell, and this playlist actually got a little old for me rather quickly because the limited visibility really limited your weapon selection, and of course made most vehicles rather useless, planes especially. It's not super fun just bombing flag icons through a blizzard over and over again. So yeah, I like the idea of that weather-focused playlist, but I don't think having the weather effects on 100% of the time is actually as fun as I was hoping. Maybe it should just be like a 75% chance of the weather effects, you know, activating at some point during the match, or maybe that should just be how the default maps are anyway. I know that I've seen quite a few people talking about uninstalling the game, taking breaks as well, so I want to hear from you guys. If you're a longtime Battlefield player like me, did you play more over the holidays, or did you also find yourself taking a break? If you did take that break, did you miss the game, or were you enjoying playing some other stuff and hoping for some changes, kind of like I was? For now, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.